Welcome to a new episode of Outside the Panels with your host, Johnny the Machine Hughes.
Welcome everyone to an episode of Outside the Panels. I'm your host, Johnny the Machine Hughes, and joining me this time around is a creator, writer of a fantastic all-ages book. I have to push my teeth in for that one. It's been on Kickstarter. It's massively successful. 2 issues digitally. I'm talking, of course, about the fantastic Ryan Drost.
Yes, you got it.
Yay! I had to take a breath. I was like, yeah, it's fine. Apologies. Ryan, how's things going for you, sir?
Things are excellent. Could not be better. We're in full swing of getting the rewards out for the second issue, all the physical rewards and everything else. So, yeah, things are just plugging along. Already working on issue 3. So.
That's what the fans want to hear. It's
yeah.
like, ooh, issue 3. Yeah. But for everyone else who's thinking, what on earth are they talking about? I have from your Kickstarter the video. So let's see if we can get this up and running. There we go. Let's see what it's all about.
Stealth Hammer is an all-ages superhero comic that takes place in a world of high-tech gadgetry and supernatural mythology. Stealth Hammer tells the story of Jamie Taylor, a teenage college student who, after an explosion in her father's lab caused by her selfish and vindictive uncle, finds herself with amazing superpowers. Among these are fists with the power of sledgehammers and the ability to become invisible. This first issue we're creating tells the story of her origin, which is only the beginning of her adventures. Along the way, she will discover she is part of a grand legacy of protectors. She'll find allies and enemies in both the super science tech world she lives in and the dark supernatural mythologies around the globe. Join the creative team on this exciting new world-building tale by supporting the Stealth Hammer Kickstarter today.
All right.
Lucasfilm is not calling me for any special effects work yet.
You think? Oh, I think you're being too harsh on yourself. I think it's great.
It was fun putting that together. It was
excellent. Okay. Depends on you. Do you really want to be with Lucasfilms? Because I mean, Star Wars fans are they're a crazy bunch of people.
They are. Well, I'm one of them, but I'm not crazy. So
yeah, me too. You know, I mean, there's only so many fan bases scream for something,
right?
Then when they get it, scream that it's wrong. It's like, well, what's that all about? You know?
Yeah.
Anyway, enough. We'll probably get back to Star Wars sooner or later. So, Ryan,
yes.
Let's start at the top and work our way down. How did you get involved in comics in the first place?
So I took the very long route, which is I was obviously a huge comic collector, especially in the 90s. When I was a kid in the 80s, I didn't collect a lot. I read a few here and there, but when the 90s hit, I was a heavy collector and have been ever since.
So such as what? Names, drop some names. Let's hit.
Oh, God. So I got into Spider-Man, of course, which I think everyone did. I got into, I'm a huge Green Lantern fan. So I
really,
Green Lantern is my favorite superhero of all time. So
which one? Hal Jordan?
I'm a Hal Jordan fan because I grew up with Super Friends, but Kyle Rayner is a close number 2. So
Jessica for me, Jessica Cruz.
Oh, love her. Yeah, she's awesome. Yeah, she's absolutely brilliant. The only one I could never get much into was Guy Gardner.
I think you're not supposed to. That's the
I think that's the idea behind him, right?
yeah. It's like the one you want to smack upside the head.
So. Exactly. And then Flash is my second favorite character.
All right. So, which one?
Wally West.
So, really? Whoa. Yeah. That's some big chops there. Like.
Oh yeah.
Man.
Yeah. I was reading when Wade was doing his run on it.
Perfect.
So yeah, I mean.
Yeah.
But yeah, so collected all that. I also dove into like the supernatural stuff. So I loved like
Okay.
Ghost Rider, and I was there at the start of the whole Midnight Suns time period. So
All right, okay. So some Texera, some Blades.
yeah, exactly.
Cool.
So did that for, still been collecting since then. And then I mentioned before we started, I've been doing a podcast for about 12 years.
Uh-huh.
And that started simply because I had a friend that said, hey, we could talk about some stuff. And I was like, yeah, we could do that. And you hear other people, and of course you reach out to people and say, hey, how do you do this? And you start doing it. And it's one of those things that I interviewed, because we do focus a lot on comics. We focus on the 1980s properties that we grew up with. So Transformers, Star Wars, all that stuff.
Okay.
So so we would have people on, writers and artists and things like that. And of course, you start finding out more and more about the business and the behind the scenes and all that type of stuff. And I've always felt like I've been a storyteller. I've always wanted to tell my own story. So started reaching out to people and said, hey, I knew people that did Kickstarters and everything else and created their own comics. I was like, what's involved? Learned a lot. Our first Kickstarter was not successful, and I learned a lot from that because I basically made the Kickstarter kind of about us as the creators. Yeah. And actually was fortunate to speak to someone at Kickstarter, and they're like, told me flat out that's where the problem was. Right. Like, no one knows you. You're not a Scott Snyder or a...
Yeah. No one cares. You're just a guy with a book.
Right. So they're like, make them feel about the characters. Make them feel like they want to know more about the characters. And that's where we created that second video that you showed.
And that's a great call, isn't it? Because that's they want to see your passion for the characters. Yes. Yeah. And that transcends, that you're just a guy with a book. It's like, hey, there's this guy talking big about this book.
Yeah.
Let's go look at the book, right?
Exactly. And the idea for the comic came from, as far as like, because I've had a lot of different ideas, but this particular comic is always the part that cracks people up the most. The name of Stealth Hammer came from a nickname that my wife has.
Do we need to know the reason how she got this nickname?
I can give you the short version, which is she's a graphic designer, and she got the nickname Stealth because she swooped in one time and won a client over. And then at another company, she was in charge of brand compliance. So she was the one that had to kind of lay the hammer down when the wrong color was used or the wrong location was used.
Or the font was off, or the the image was stretched past the point of pixelization.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Communication officers.
She put the two. Yes. So she put the two nicknames together because her boss was calling her the Hammer, and she's like, "Well, I already have a nickname of Stealth," so they called her Stealth Hammer. Yeah. And we always joked it'd make a great superhero.
Yeah,
it's a fun name. So we talked about powers and all that type of stuff. And then for her birthday one year, I had her drawn as a superhero. Cool. And once I saw that image, I was like, okay, maybe we got something here.
And is that image transposed into this book?
It actually has changed quite a bit. It's evolved into its own character now. So the character is named after my wife. My wife's name is Jamie, and the character's name is Jamie, and her mom's maiden name is Taylor. So I just pulled that. I pulled a lot from family genealogy and stuff like that. Okay. So,
I love you so much. I have you in a Kickstarter.
Yes. Oh yeah. But yeah. So we start. A lot of the character's personality is based on her. The tagline of like, "That's not how the story ends," which is her tagline of "Never giving up." That is literally a line from that my wife has used in life. So. So there's a lot of real life things to pull from. And then, the second I was like, okay, maybe I can do a story with this. I relate it to, no near at the same level, of course, but to the story of Paul McCartney and how he wrote Yesterday. Like he said, he woke up one day, had this song in his head, and in 15 minutes he wrote it. That's kind of what happened here. It was like the second I thought, I could do this, all of a sudden it was like, okay, this is who her family is. This is who her friends are. Here's her enemies. This is what she looks like. This is what she's going to do. These are her powers. Here's how she gets her power. Like, it was just flooding. I was on my phone in a shopping mall, like typing up all the things as the ideas flooded in. So it was really a moment of inspiration in a lot of respects.
Excellent. I like how that just sort of like the once you made that decision, the floodgates just kind of opened.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's like boom, boom, boom. Excellent. There are some influences on show in the book.
Yes.
I think you mentioned that on the Kickstarter as well, on the Kickstarter page.
Yeah.
So things like, we're going to have to say Dungeons and Dragons, aren't we?
Yeah. Well, I never got into Dungeons and Dragons myself as a kid.
What?
I loved fantasy world stuff.
I love the cartoon show.
That was my Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah, me too, man.
Yeah.
Just people tell me it's 20-sided dice. I'm like, no, just
No.
put cartoon on. Let me be.
Yeah, it's about kids that rode a roller coaster and went into a fantasy world. That's what it's
Apart from that bloody unicorn, how did that thing not get killed?
I don't know. Same way all the other comedic relief characters from the time stayed alive.
God.
But yeah, it was there. I can tell you, like, fantasy world wise, there was inspirations of like Legend of Zelda. I'm a huge fan of that. I'm a huge fan of mythologies, and I'm talking like all mythologies. So if you tell me like, oh, this part of the country has its own mythology of these characters or gods, I'm all in. I'm all ready to like research it and everything else. So that's what I did for a lot of my characters in this. There's a character in the first issue named Marzana, and she is a Polish deity of death. And how I came across her was I was watching Mr. Science Theater 3000, and they had an episode about deities across the country and mythologies across the country, and all of a sudden they mentioned this name, and I was like, I've never heard that name before, and I started researching her, and I'm like, there's not a lot out there about her. Let me go ahead and see what we can do with her. So, but yeah, it's been a wild ride of inspirations. There's nods to the 80s stuff. Like I do mention, there is a literal quote from Ghostbusters in there, and her dad calls her out on it in the story.
Really? Please, it's not who you're going to call, right? No.
No.
Please be more subtle than that, right?
Oh, she does the Venkman speech to Ray of like, whatever the reasons, Ray, except she says dad, call it fate, call it luck, call it karma.
Yeah, cool.
So she goes down that path, and he goes, "Did you just quote Ghostbusters to me?"
No. I think there are other influences on there. As soon as you mentioned Bad Uncle, I'm thinking Scar from The Lion King.
Oh yeah, well, Lion King is my wife and my favorite movie. That's our movie together that we actually danced to "Can You Feel the Love Tonight" at our wedding. So yeah,
dressed as lions, right?
No.
Oh, that would have been a good YouTube video. It's a dark movie, isn't it, Lion King?
Yes.
When you think about the stories in there, it's not all cutesy at all.
Well, and that's what I was going for with this was because, like I mentioned, I have that one character Marzana, and she's a Polish deity of death, and like my wife's like, okay, but aren't you doing an all ages comic story? And I say, I am. But I'm doing the all ages like I grew up with, which like the Jim Henson's Dark Crystal and Labyrinth and things like that. And like you mentioned, with Lion King, like there's dark moments. It's just how do you tell them? How do you show them? I have nightmares from like the boat scene in Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, but it's still considered an all ages movie.
I think everyone has nightmares about Willy Wonka. We want to tackle obesity in various countries. Show that movie before you buy some chocolate, candy. I'd stop it straight away. Absolutely.
But yeah, it was that type of story I wanted to tell. I wanted to tell something that I would have enjoyed when I was growing up. So,
with the magical elements in there, would you say there's a little bit of Harry Potter?
There are magical elements in there. I am a Harry Potter fan. But
Star Wars and Harry Potter. There's a rule on this, man. You can only like one or the other. You know
you can absolutely like them all. It's like when people say you have to like DC or Marvel. I'm like, no, I like both. I'm good.
Okay. My wife's a Harry Potter fan. She absolutely loves them to bits, the whole thing. And she likes Star Wars to the point where every time I put a Star Wars movie on, the first thing she'll say is this the one with the teddy bears in? I'm like, sweetheart, we never watched the one with the teddy bears in.
And see, I was 8 years old when Return of the Jedi came out, so that's the one I connect to the most.
Right. So I was 7 when Star Wars came out, A New Hope, and it was Star Wars. There was no number 4. There was no New Hope to it. It was Star Wars.
Yes.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. But
I think,
but yeah,
I've got a bit more grey on you.
there's some, but yeah, there's magical elements in it, and I will say that actually a lot of the magical elements came from my wife and I were fortunate for a milestone birthday for her. We went on a trip to Iceland, and
okay.
beautiful country, amazing. Like there's parts of that country that you don't believe you're still on the same planet anymore. And we learned a lot about, again, shocker with me, I learned a lot about their mythology there, and beliefs in elves, and we learned about their aurora borealis, and so they refer to the goddess Aurora and stuff like that. So I started pulling those elements in, and while I was there, I actually got this little guy.
Hold on, hand fire.
And that is that ended up being an inspiration for the character Ari the Elf, who's in the comic. So
go then, let's have a look. There you go.
Yeah. So
look at him.
Brought him from I like that he had this like little Where's Waldo hat and everything.
Cool.
But yeah, he ended up becoming this little sidekick character. He's kind of like my Yoda character, but at the same time, he's the disgruntled guy that also, like, he's a little bit of the comic relief, but a little bit smarter comic relief.
just remember, kids, elves are for all year, not just for Christmas.
That's right. But I had fun writing him because he has his own unique, much like Yoda, he has his own unique way of speaking and everything else. And it's amazing once you start writing these characters, they start living in your head, and you can easily transition from one voice to another voice very quickly. So,
who's your favorite character?
In the book itself, I would say my favorite character is writing Ari, because I can have just so much fun with him. So that's the one that I get to play with a lot more than any other character.
Yeah, don't tell your wife that though, right?
No. Stealth Hammer is my favorite character. Yeah.
She's like, I've made a character about you. Let it go. That's it. All right. Right. Let's have another look at the book. We have some different things going on in this one. So this is from issue 1, which is available digitally. Is that on Comixology and your own website?
It's right now. It's just through contact. We are working right now to create a website where people can get it directly. So right now, the only way to get it is to contact me through the social media channels. So we're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, we're on Instagram.
Check out the button. There you go.
If you direct message me, I'll let you know how you can make your payment, and you can let me know what you're looking for and everything else. And I'm very easy to work with when it comes to that. But yes, we are working on a website because we want to create a site that can be a nice home base where people can learn about who the characters are, what the world is about, and then make purchases for different things. So
cool, excellent. So yeah, you can tell this guy's the bad guy. I mean, look at that hair.
Yeah. And everyone needs an evil uncle. I mean, everyone's got an evil uncle. So
you want that in a t-shirt, don't you? All uncles are evil.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's me. So
if you can't find the evil uncle in your family, chances are it's you.
It's you, right? Exactly. But you can see in the artwork, my artist Joel Jackson, he loves doing this cartoony style, but he puts a lot of detail into the artwork.
Yeah, I was going to say that when I say, because I see a lot of books because I review for Comic Crusaders as well as these pods, and I see a lot of art, and I see like the cartoony element or the sort of like the manga inspired type of facial reactions that are kind of over the top a little bit. What surprised me when I started flicking through this book is that like the level of detail. It's not just focused on the characters. It's like the environment that they live in.
And that was very important to me because I let him know that up front, like I wanted things in the background that people could get lost in, but also that they could come back to, because again, not near the level of this person, but I refer to my writing as Claremontian, which is I put little, after Chris Claremont, so I put little nuggets of things in the background or in a word of dialogue or something like that that's going to be revisited later.
Can I ask you then, just because you mentioned it, you brought it up, why would you say your writing's not Claremontian? Because, I mean, don't get me wrong, I love Chris Claremont.
Sure.
Of its time.
Yes.
Right? Yeah. You go, Dark Phoenix is still the best X-Men story.
Yeah, for sure.
Bar none. That says more about me and thigh-high boots and basques and all sorts than it probably wants to say. But maybe Days of Future Past is a close second. but he has, as great he is, he has issues with closure.
Sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he has his writing ticks.
Yes.
You know, his tells all the time.
Oh yeah.
It's like if you read Dark Phoenix, for example, if they don't mention their psychic bond once, they must mention it a million times. And it's like when Psylocke fires off the blade. It's like my psychic knife is the power of all my. Yes, I know already. I've read it the first time. Don't you tell me like 400 times what the bloody blade is? I know what it does already.
Yeah. And I think the aspect that I'm pulling from when I say Claremontian is that I am planting things throughout the issues intentionally that will be visited later. In fact, in issue 3, there's a lot of payoffs for things for people that read issues 1 and 2.
And that's somewhere down the line that Claremont, with all due respect, potentially wasn't great at.
Yes.
It would always be, oh, I've got this great idea, let's put it in here.
Right.
Oh, I've got another great idea, let's put it here.
And then when he ran out of ideas, he would come back and go, what did I have?
yeah. I mean, how can you have a mutant future that has the Sentinels, Ahab and the Rachel Summers Phoenix, and Bishop and his gang? It's like how many futures are there?
Yeah, and there is a time travel element in my story. However, but I know the errors with those, and it is something that's planned out to show there's a purpose behind it.
It's not endgame time travel, is it?
No.
Thank God for that.
No, everything that happens related to time travel in my story plays a factor into the ending of it. And why this has all happened. So,
okay. So, Ryan, you sound like you're really invested in this book. You're invested in these
yeah.
characters. You're the creator. You've written it and stuff. How is it then for you to hand over the reins, per se, to the various artists? Because Joel Jackson's the main artist on issue 1 and 2. Although there is another artist on as a backup strip on the first one.
Yes.
How is it to hand over that control and then wait with bated breath for the pages to come in?
So the great thing was, obviously, I saw a lot of his work, Joel's work, ahead of time, and so I kind of knew what I was getting into. The great thing is, especially with him, and it should be the case with every artist, is that the stuff I had seen that he had done was older stuff. He has evolved. He has become stronger as an artist from the stuff I originally saw. So when he sent me pages back, they surpassed anything I was expecting. Like, I would put things into the scene, like when you were showing, if you show the first page, the very first page of issue 1, she's in her room, and there's a lot of stuff that was written in the script that I wanted to make sure was in that room because it meant something to all the rest of future stories and everything else. However, Joel put more things in there. And the great thing about that is it becomes a collaborative effort. It becomes something where he puts something in there, and then that sparks an idea of like, okay, here's how I'm going to use this. And here's how I'm going to, so right there, like, I can tell you there's a little picture of the robot in the corner there on the left-hand side. There's a medallion of hers that's hanging over the desk. There's a sword up on the wall. All of these things were written into the script that they needed to be in this room. Her dog laying there, that's actually her costume laying on the chair. So that gives a hint to the reader that the story takes place after she's already become a superhero as far as her writing about it. So there's all these things that are in there. And then he threw in more things on the shelves and everything else. And I started looking at these things and I'm like, ooh, I know what I can do with that. I know what I can do with this. So everything starts becoming a story element. So it really has become such a huge collaborative effort between us. And that's been the fun part about it, is that I never worry when I'm passing something along to him because it's going to come back better than I ever expected it to be.
Cool. Excellent. All right, we'll take a quick break there before we get involved because I've got a really great question to start us off for the second half. So I'm really quite interested in that one. So we have lots of different shows on the UCPN. Pick your poison. You're the guest. What would you like? Would you like to see something Marvel, something DC? something.
I'm a
something
DC
completely
guy, so
different.
let's go DC.
DC. Oh,
Yes.
hang on. Nobody shouts for the DC advert. Here we go. This is the Definitive Crusade. Besides, waiting for it. There you go, the Definitive Crusade, which drops alternate Wednesdays for everything that is DC or Batman, depending on your point of view.
Right.
Just
Especially these days.
saying. Just saying. All right, okay. So I have a question. I really like this panel. I've seen it a couple of times now. We were talking before the break about how you react to the art or the trust you have in Joel Jackson as your artist.
Yeah.
You mentioned that your wife's also a graphic designer. She's into graphics. How does that dynamic work when you've got your idea in your head, right? Then Joel does his thing,
right?
And then what your wife maybe looks at it and goes, "Well."
Oh, that's happened.
I can imagine. If she's got a nickname like Stealth Hammer, she's creeping around on her tippy toes waiting to bash your book. She's not really.
No. She's been my hugest advocate. I call her my PR guru. She's the one that reaches out to a lot of places and really gets the word out there for it. So and she helped. She created the title image. She created the logo for the character. She help me with the interior credits page and stuff like that. But yeah, she'll. The great thing about actually having her as a graphic designer is if I get a page back from Joel, or if I get a page back from the colorist, and we've had a few different colorists, if something just looks a little off or something doesn't look quite right, she can kind of she'll notice it because she's coming into it cold, and she'll notice it more than I will because I'm in the weeds and everything.
Yeah, and you're focused. You're like,
yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
So she can, she'll notice something, she might point it out, and she'll actually go on the computer and kind of tweak something, and just kind of like a quick tweak to say, here's how I think maybe this could work better, or how this might look better, or something like that. And it might be a color change, or it might be this or that, or whatever. And I can then send that and I could go, oh yeah, I like that a lot better. I can send that to the creative team and say, hey, what do you guys think about this? It's something we played around with. And it makes it so much easier for them to visualize it and see it and go, oh yeah, I do like that. Yeah.
How did you get Dave Sharp involved on letters? Because Dave Sharp's a bit of a comic veteran.
Yes.
And I'm just looking at this panel here, where the middle panel, dude, that's some verbiage.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
This isn't like, I'll be done in 10 minutes with this book. This is quite hardcore with some of the. So how did you manage to get Dave on there? Because I mean this with great respect.
Yeah.
The dude's been around. He's got some.
Oh yeah. No, for sure. And even the colorist on this was Ross Hughes, who had been around for quite a while. That's where the podcast came into play, because I knew people in the industry, and I said, hey, I'm looking for a letterer. And my buddy Robert Atkins, who did the variant cover for this first issue.
Oh, is that the one I really like? Is that
yes,
that one?
Yes, that one right there. Yeah. That's my buddy Robert Atkins. He offered to do a variant cover for me, and I was like, that would be amazing. And he's the one that he says, hey, Dave Sharp's a really good letterer. Why don't you try reaching out to him? and he says, you can use my name if you want. So reached out to Dave, and the great thing with Dave, well, number one, he's a consummate professional. Like he is amazing, super nice guy. And he was happy to do it because he said, I don't have a lot of all ages stuff in my repertoire.
Oh, okay.
And he says, when people come to my tables, I'm usually having this or that. And he said, it'd be great to have something on my table that's like for kids walking by. So
good shout. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
And after we were done, I being a newbie to it, I even asked him, I was like, hey, if we do another issue, would you like to be on board? And he's like, I said, or did I drive you crazy and make you run away? And he says, he's like, oh no, you were much easier than most clients I have to deal with. So I'm happy to come back and do it again.
You're like, just you wait, chap. Just you wait. 10 issues in, I'll be asking for a page reduction on everything. Just you wait.
Well, and I think that's another thing too, is anytime I reach out to a creator, because I know what people go through in the industry, I try my best to make sure that they know that they are going to be paid for the work they do.
Cool.
It's going to be prompt, and that they're going to get what they deserve to get paid. So,
there's a lot of, I wouldn't say there's a lot actually. There's quite a bit of hubbub about letterers not getting credits.
Yeah.
Some of this started by me. I'm not going to lie. It annoys me when a big two book puts on the writer, the artist, the colorist, and that's it.
And that's it. Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm sure that someone's missing on there.
Oh yeah.
I think if you're going to have letterers, which we need letterers, then they should be credited on the cover.
Oh yeah. And I tell people all the time, obviously a lot of indie groups on the Facebook and all that type of stuff. I tell people all the time, like, if you don't have a lot of money and you're looking for an inexpensive way to make your project look professional, hire a letterer.
Yeah.
A letterer is not very, very expensive to get. I mean, they do deserve more, but they're not very expensive to get. And it can make the difference between your project looking professional and looking like complete garbage.
Yeah, and that's the thing, isn't it? I don't mean this is disrespect to any letterers out there, because you have my undying respect massively. But nobody goes to a comic book shop and goes, "Ooh, I must buy this book. It's lettered by."
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, they are the unsung heroes of the comic book world.
Well, in a lot of respects, the letterer and the colorist, a lot of times you don't know when you have good lettering and coloring, oftentimes, because it just works.
I think
you definitely notice when you have bad.
Yeah, that's a good shout. It's like refs in football, right?
Yeah.
Refs, just hold on every play, man. Stop calling it every time, especially on third and long. Thanks, cheers.
I do think colorists are getting a little bit more attention nowadays than they ever did, though.
I think that's probably due to the digital colors.
Yeah.
I mean, my guilty pleasure, I can't believe I'm going to have to say this on air. My guilty pleasure is some of the Zenescope books.
Yeah.
The Van Helsing, right?
Yeah.
And Zenescope, no matter what you think of them being cheesecake, being whatever, for the longest time, the quality of their books, color-wise, has been fantastic.
Oh, yeah.
Across the board.
100% agree. Absolutely.
Yeah. So when you look at Zenescope, you know you're going to get a well-produced comic book.
Yes.
The art might not always be up to the same scratch that you expect from the cover. That's a different story.
Sure.
But production-wise, you know you're going to get a decent comic.
Yeah. And that was actually something that was a nice, pleasant surprise that I got with my comic when I took it to my local comic shop and asked them if we want to sell it and everything. And they were all for it. The owner there told me, he's like, the quality that you have here, paper-wise, effort-wise, art-wise, coloring-wise, he says, this is better than most stuff that I have on the table right now.
Well, I'm gonna be honest. I'm gonna be absolutely honest. I'm not going to name and shame in any way or form. But I recently looked at a book that was supposed to be a celebration of Image.
Yeah.
And it was hard work.
Yeah.
But then I see, when I wrote the review, I'm thinking, oh, people are going to think that I hate indie books. I don't. I love indie books. I love the fact that you can do so much with them. It hurts sometimes that you don't have the indie characters don't have the same, I suppose, cross-market appeal that like the Batmans and the Supermans and Spider-Mans do. But the freedom of that means you can do whatever you want.
Yeah.
Your own. Yeah, exactly. You can go into left field if you want to go into left field.
Yeah.
But then I see indie books like Stealth Hammer, and I'm absolutely blown away. The art style isn't my cup of tea. I'm going to be honest.
Sure. Yeah,
I'm
that's
not. I'm not into cutesy
sure.
Inspector Gadget style art. But
Yeah.
then the book's not always aimed at me.
Right.
Every book should be. Just saying.
I know. I understand. No, and I
can
understand.
sit back and I can say, wow, this is a great example of this type of work. And that is absolutely the truth.
Yeah.
It absolutely is.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's how I am too. Like if someone tells me, like, I didn't care for it, and I'll ask why, because I want to know. I want to know, was there mistakes that we made or something like that? But if someone's just like, oh, it's not really my style, I'm like, oh, that's no problem at all. Like,
yeah. As is a saying over here in the UK, there's 57 varieties, right?
Right.
You know, the cans of soup from Heinz. Yeah.
Right.
That's what we said. There's 57 varieties. So, you know, there's a reason why there's so many comic books out there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. What was the idea of making it all ages? Because I mean, I'm really quite curious because some of the influences you've got going on can be a little bit dark. How did you manage to corral that into being all ages?
Yeah, so like you said, I'm a huge Jim Henson fan in general. So so that played a factor into it because he did all ages, but it wasn't like the all cutesy all ages type stuff.
Oh, look at your dude.
Yeah, and those are the things that stuck with me. I can tell you also that there was a creator who sadly had passed away. His name was Jeremy Dale, who did an all ages comic called Skyward that was very Legend of Zelda style story. I knew him, and unfortunately, he passed away before he got to ever finish it. And it was one of those things where I absolutely fell in love with what he was doing. Right. That I was like, this is the type of story I want to tell.
Mm-hmm.
And the all ages thing really, I know there's a lot out there, but I do feel like, especially you were mentioning with like the big two, I feel like the big two aren't doing enough to bring in the next generation of readers and things like that. They're trying in some respects, but I feel like they're floundering a little bit. So,
see, it's a hard one.
Yeah.
Because when I was growing up, we didn't have all ages comics.
No.
We had Batman, Detective, Spider-Man, Superman. We didn't have to worry about all ages. And part of that probably was the comic code. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. It's tough nowadays because I love all those too. I read a whole bunch of comics, but it just feels like, yes, you're absolutely right. I could read a comic from back when I was first starting to read, and I'd have no problem giving that to a younger niece or nephew.
Yeah.
However, if I grabbed a comic today, I feel like a Batman comic, I feel like I need to read it first before I would give it to them.
Absolutely. There was I was in my local comic book shop, and there was a couple of parents, a mum and a dad, buying a comic for the kid and stuff, and they bought them the Batman comic from the Tom King run, where Booster Gold goes back in time.
Yeah.
To stop him marrying or to get him to marry Selena, and it's really quick. Someone gets shot at the end of that book. I'm thinking to myself, this kid's like 8. I'm like, there's no way I would let my 8-year-old read that book.
No.
You know.
So like I said, I think because, and I have no problem with the books being that way. It's just if you're gonna do books like that, then you do need to kind of get back to books that were like when we grew up. Then you need to create, and that's where the all ages kind of come into play.
Cool. It's a good shout. I applaud anybody who tries different things. I remember the Batman the Animated Series book, The Batman Adventures. Yeah. How good was that?
Oh, it's fantastic.
I would recommend that to anybody.
Absolutely.
You know? And that's like, there you go, read that. It's Batman, and that boom, job's done. You know?
I remember giving the Young Justice comic to my nieces and nephews because they absolutely. And they devoured it. They just thought it was fantastic. So.
Yeah. I think all ages can have a bit of a negative spin from people who've been in the industry for a while.
Yeah.
You know.
And I think that's not. Yeah, and that's the thing for me too is like I don't want people to see. I really wanted to make something that was all ages. Like you said, maybe the art style isn't yours, something like that. But I wanted something where someone my age could pick it up and still enjoy it, but somebody can then read it with their 5-year-old kid.
And that works. Absolutely. I'm not, when I say the art's not my style, it's more of an overview. the quality of the art is bang on. It's perfect for that style.
Yeah,
so
absolutely. No,
please don't tell Joel that I hate his work.
Oh no, not at all.
I don't need another angry artist at me. Thanks.
No, not at all. Not at all. But it was fun too, like talking about like all ages when it comes to like I said, what I grew up with, like creepy things and everything else. So the page you're looking at right there, with no, you're fine. We had this one character that was one of the agents you saw in the first issue.
Mm-hmm.
She's a shapeshifter. And I told Joel, I was like, I want something that's a little different when it comes to shapeshifting. And he went gross with it. But it's the gross that I think a kid would look at that and go, oh, that's cool.
Yeah, I totally get that. Yes. That's a great shout, actually, because you've got it's perfect. You know, you don't, for all ages, you don't want the monster to be questioned. You just want it to exist.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And I suppose that in part is part of the difference between comics of the past and comic books now.
Yeah.
Back in the day, I'm going to mention Bats again. Batman would pull off a face mask, Mission Impossible style. He'd be wearing his cowl with his pointy ears, and nobody would bat an eyelid. No one would actually think, "Wait a minute, where does these go?" Now, it's like he's drenched in shadow.
Yeah.
A face hangs loosely from his fist.
Yes.
And then he steps half in, and you see the little points on his ears, and you're like, that's just the way it is now.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And like I said, for me, it was like, and I tell people like this comic is a superhero adventure story in a world of like Mega Man meets Jim Henson's Creature Shop. So I threw in the Mega Man thing in there because I didn't want the technology to seem realistic. Like I have gadgets and everything else just popping out of things that probably have no business popping out of where they're popping out of. But it just kind of works for the world that we've created here. So.
And I'm looking at this panel here again. Lots of words, lots of verbiage going on there, and it's a very complicated page layout.
Yeah.
So when we talk about all ages, it's that level of, I suppose, the adult can follow the page design, the panel design, and can appreciate it.
Yes.
Over the not just the kind of cartoony elements that are on show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the kid looks at it and goes, "Oh my God, look at that! Look at this!"
Yeah.
Yeah,
cool. I've got to say the level of detail is fantastic. The colors are fantastic.
I've had people that said like, "Did you scare your colorists away with how much detail were in some of the pages?" I was like, well, there's times when they had to be paid a little bit more for some of the pages.
That's why on the first book you've got Ross Hughes, you've got Evan Evans. Great name, by the way, Evan.
Yes.
Well done.
Oh yeah.
Lacey Hart, and I've written it down. Okay, Julio. Is it Santo? Yeah. Cool. I've scribbled it down quickly.
Yeah.
So you've got more than just one to get angry at, right?
Right. Well, Ross was the main colorist, and to your point, as far as giving credit where credit's due, Ross asked me, "Would you mind if my color assistants were listed in the credits also?" Cool. And I was like, "I have no problem with that." Yeah. So
as long as I don't have to pay them.
He pays them out of the money I pay him. So
fair enough. Fair dues. All right, there you go. So give us you've hinted at already. Give us your 30-second elevator pitch why people should be checking out your social media platforms. I'll run it there again for you so they can get hold of Stealth Hammer.
Absolutely. So as I mentioned earlier, Stealth Hammer is an all ages superhero adventure comic. So it is an adventure. We're going on the quest in a world of high-tech gadgetry and supernatural mythology. So I mentioned earlier, if you like superheroes, you like technology, you like mythology, this got a little bit something for everybody. Cool. And if you like everything mattering in your comic, where you can look at something and it means something, that is absolutely this comic. There are things in the background that I want people 3-4 issues down the line to go back and go, "Oh my God, that was in the first issue." So
see, I like that. I like that idea. One of the things I hate about, I don't know if you guys get it over there, Sherlock, the BBC show with Benedict Cumberbatch.
Yeah,
at the end, I love it up to the point where he solves everything, and then he says, "Yes, but I noticed this, I noticed that," and blah blah blah. I've rewatched those episodes, and the viewer doesn't get to see what he sees.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, if you want to be clever about it, you would put them
there.
in. Yeah. It's like the first Mission Impossible when they go to the embassy.
Yes.
Right? You don't notice that the other IM team is there.
Until
he mentions it, and then he goes, and you're like, oh man, look! And then when you rewatch it the second time,
you see it all.
Yeah, exactly. That's clever.
Yeah. And that's what we're trying to do with this. We want to show you the stuff. We just don't want to necessarily point it out until it's time to point it out.
Good job.
And there's things like I'll give you an example from issue 1 and issue 2 was issue 1. There was a judo studio, and he asked me, what do you want to name it? And I went deep into mythology and everything else and came up with the Kodama, which is a spirit creature in Japanese mythology. And I was like, okay, I'm going to use this later, so let's call that the Kodama Studio, so people can like make that connection at some point. In issue 2, we name the town. We don't come right out and say what the name of the town is, but there is a police station that is shown, and it has the name of the police station, because you don't call it just police station.
No.
It's the city's name, so it's Lioness, and Lioness is believed to be the last battle location for King Arthur. Well, who's on the front cover of issue 2? There's a King Arthur character there. That plays into our story. So there's things like that we're planting these seeds to work with.
Cool. So. And you tell me that you're not Claremontian, really?
The man's a legend. I'll let other people decide if at some point in the future I'm a legend. So
there you go. All right, Ryan, thank you so much for spending the time. Don't disappear at the end of the credits. We'll talk about what stuff. Don't forget to check out UCPN for all your favorite shows, including, you saw the advert, the Definitive Crusade, and of course a show that Ryan might enjoy, the Old Timers Comic Book Show, where the hosts aren't old, but the comics most certainly are. There you go. I've been your host, Johnny the Machine Hughes. Ryan, thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.
Anytime. And all that's left for me to say is adios.
Visit undercovercapes.com for the latest and greatest podcasts via the Undercover Capes Podcast Network. Also visit our parent company website, comiccrusaders.shop, all about comic pop culture.